Hello, everybody. My name is Charles, and yes, Annette is my other half, and I suppose I'm here to tell you a little bit about my life on Earth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I suppose what we've seen from Annette was a female sort of experience, and then of course you lived at a similar time as she, didn't you? But now you've got sort of a completely different reasons why you became mind dominant.
Yeah. It's a good assignment that you gave us today because, I had to take myself back to that time on Earth, and it's such a long time ago now, and I've forgotten.
Memories.
Yeah.
500-year-old memories, you see. So
Yeah.
it's like hard to remember sometimes, particularly when you're very happy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel a completely different man to what I was then, So I suppose I should say that the society that I grew up in, I had a much freer life than Annette, but no more emotional, certainly. I was raised in some affluence. But by the time I reached sort of my maturity or manhood, I had no... even before then, I would say as a very small child, I knew that a male persona shouldn't have any feeling. In fact, I would say by the time I was 5 or 6, if you had asked me what I felt, I couldn't tell you. The idea of anyone asking you how you felt as a male would be preposterous.
As if that would ever happen.
Yeah. I really lived my life on Earth thinking that thinking. I didn't have any emotion, it felt like. And that was one of my biggest challenges when I entered the spirit life, was that when I met spirits who... So maybe I should rewind a little bit, but
jumping ahead,
yes,
quite a long time.
Yes. So I grew. I would have called myself a master of industry on the earth. I was a success,
What kind of industry was it?
Sort of shipping and trade and
So family fairly wealthy.
Yes. And I had personal wealth, and I had some church life, I didn't feel so...
Were you married?
Yes, I had a family.
Had children?
Yep. I didn't feel so abused by my society by any measure. I felt like I was rewarded for this very stoic man that I was. But again, it seems strange to even call it a stoic man, because I just thought I was being a man. And I really had no awareness of anything but my intellect for my entire life on Earth. And I lived to 75, thereabouts. Quite an old man at that time.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but I was...
unusual.
Yeah. I was... I sort of outlived a lot of my family. My wife and a couple of my children had already died by the time I died. And I felt... I didn't feel. I was. It was probably a better way of saying it. But when I passed, then
Well, the question I forgot to ask your soulmate too was, did you have any belief in God at all at the time before you passed, or?
Well, yes, I did. I sort of believed in the doctrine of the Catholic Church. With my mind. So
triune God.
Yes.
Jesus
heaven,
saving you.
Hell.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. But there was absolutely no emotional or heartfelt engagement with that. It was just the facts of life. And so when it came to the time of my death, I wouldn't say that I faced it with grace. I hung on because I really didn't I didn't know. I suppose I believed, but I didn't know.
Sort of that you sort of didn't know what to believe in your feelings.
Yeah.
But you didn't even consider your feelings enough to even validate them.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So I too entered the spirit life into quite a cold place. I had sinned a lot more than Annette. in terms of I'd taken a lot of actions in my life that were exploiting others, and I had been very selfish in my dealings with everyone, really, and I didn't have a high opinion of myself in terms of that I thought I was morally wonderful, but I just didn't really think about it.
You didn't think it mattered?
No.
Oh.
I would say I had just almost no awareness of myself. I was really just operating in my society in the way that I thought that I should, and thinking thoughts and making what I called reasonable decisions. And
to your own benefit.
To my own benefit, which seemed reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I entered the spirit life, there was a lot of restriction on me that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I felt, but I didn't feel much about it. I thought confused. I thought, what's going on here? I didn't associate where I was with hell because it didn't meet with the priest's description of a fiery place. I wasn't in a fiery place. I was in a cold, damp, smelly place where, there was rats and, it just was yuck. And
a big contrast from your rich.
That's right. I couldn't
palatial home and on earth.
eat the food that I was accustomed to eating. I didn't have people bringing me things or looking after me or tucking me in. I had none of that. Yeah. And I just thought, I don't understand, and it took me years actually to really even have my tantrum about that, even have my indignation about that.
Yeah.
Because I had reached a state of being really very numb. I tried to talk with people about it. I tried to see people and say, well, what's happening here?
Yeah.
But obviously, as you've alluded to in some of your discussion today, I wasn't very sincere about getting the answers.
Yeah.
I wanted any answer except that it had something to do with me.
Or to do with your moral condition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it took some time. But eventually, I obviously gained sincerity through how long it was that I was feeling like uncomfortable and in this smelly place. So it was quicker for me to move, if you like, than Annette. But I certainly, when I first, someone first came and told me that it was to do with my earth life, that was shocking to me. I was genuinely shocked because I thought there was absolutely nothing wrong with how I'd lived my life on earth. But that began, and again, it was still an intellectual process I began to examine things like morals and if I had really met with the requirements of a moral man, and I began to have lessons with actually spirits who didn't have a relationship with God, but who were in the second sphere or the third sphere or the fourth sphere, people who came to
So they were teaching you to use your mind to try to solve these problems now that you could see were moral.
Yes.
Yep.
To examine my actions.
Yep.
They were teaching me to examine my actions.
Good.
So again, we were in a completely intellectual realm and just looking at actions that I had taken, and being what I thought was a reasonable man, I began to see, okay, if you're saying this and saying that, and they would show me pictures of things that people who'd been in my employ had gone through,
or because of the choices you made,
yes.
how other people were harmed.
Yes.
Yep.
And I could see, okay, logically there's a problem. Yeah. So
still using your mind
yes.
to logically work out there's a problem, and they're trying to help you with their mind too to see there's a problem.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, and actually there was some improvement to where I was. It was very slow, very gradual, but I thought, okay, well, I've got to keep doing this.
So at this stage, what sphere were you in?
I'm still in the first sphere.
And how long have we now covered?
50 years maybe.
Yeah.
It's probably, it only took me a year or two to get started, but then it was very slow going
gotcha.
after that.
As it is.
Yes. But of course, there came a turning point. So I was very engaged in this intellectual education, and
so what was the turning point?
Yeah,
that's what everyone's interested.
Interested, yeah. Well, it took a lot for a man like me, or the man that I was, and what happened was that I was having these classes, if you like, with these. I was a student now, and I was being shown different things that happened. And one of the things that I was shown was I had a little girl, my wife had a little girl who died very shortly after she was born. And of course, I wasn't there when it happened, and I was very cold to my wife about the event. I blamed her, and also I thought, well, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big deal, this thing that had happened. And I was shown in the course of these lessons the effect that it had on my wife, but also on the child. And it surprisingly, something stirred in me. It was I felt something, and I hadn't done that for as long as I could remember. But perhaps it was this working upon the morality, and I began to, I had begun to sort of see that maybe my definition of right and wrong was not correct, and then to be shown the level of suffering that my wife went through after that event, and to be shown the level of rejection that my daughter had felt from me around that event. It was quite extreme, and I found myself crying. And that was a very alien thing for me. I couldn't understand what even crying was. And
so it'd be the first time you cried for how many years?
Probably over 100, since I was a small child on earth. Yeah, and it was such an alien thing for me that it really, I almost went into shock. I felt sad. I felt very, very sad. And then I went into shock of what was that and what had happened. But as soon as I had allowed that, I suddenly felt the presence of my daughter near me. Yeah.
And then that caused you to cry some more.
Yes, I'm still emotional about it now. I'm more with joy now that we had the chance to have a relationship, and she's the one who told me about God, who showed me about God,
so quite special in that regard. For you.
Yeah, it's a very special moment in our soul's history for me. Because not only did it bring me to God, it brought me eventually to Annette. But with Carol, I could have a relationship with my daughter, and it was a turning point. You understand the turning points in your soul.
And also how special the people who trigger them come to be for you.
Yes. Precious. It was a precious time, and I think that. Things moved quicker for me, a lot quicker after that. But I have had a lot of repentance to deal with, a lot of repentance. And that's
the repentance feelings were all sad, weren't they? They're all sad. So
pain,
a lot of pain and suffering.
And just bringing that, initially when I started that repentance process, I would get sort of. I would sort of open up enough to feel the wrong, to feel a sense of the wrong. And then I would waste too much time in regret. And I had to learn that, no, this repentance process is just being willing to go to the pain that was created, and the grief and the cause of why
instead
it happened.
of just living a life and going, I feel terrible about it, and just keep feeling terrible about it.
Exactly.
Without actually feeling anything.
Yeah. And so, but I felt my relationship with God really just open up through that process, and now God is who I rely on, just absolutely, and trust. And the idea of my mind is sort of a crazy memory in some ways, you know,
Yeah,
sort of,
yeah. And isn't it crazy when you look back on it, you sort of think, why did I rely on it so much? It was so, it only was responding to injuries, and why rely on it? You think things are reliable, but they're not that reliable.
No. And, you know, there's a terrible sadness as well of having relied on my intellect and having just really honoured the stoic existence that I had. It enabled me to perpetrate so much harm against others.
Yep.
Because
your mind justified every decision.
My mind justified it, and my stoic kind of existence detuned me from the natural, not only the conscience, but just the
results of
the emotional observation of the results. You know, people could be standing in front of me suffering, and I couldn't feel anything about that. I didn't feel anything about that. And so the sadness of being allowing that intellectual existence to really foster my career of sin in a way that I could, as soon as I made that breakthrough with emotion and with God, I just could never think of doing one of the things again. Yeah.
That's right. Once you feel it in your heart that it's wrong, that's a lot different, isn't it, than even trying to intellectually analyse whether it's wrong.
Yes, when I consider the lessons I was having in the first sphere about right and wrong and morality, that was still very intellectually driven.
Yeah.
I was attempting to learn, you know, and I was progressing slowly, but the difference between that and the feeling of, you know, when my daughter came and the experience of seeing what my wife went through, the emotional connection to that it just paled in comparison to helping me to understand how wrong how I had been and what I had done was, compared to when I was doing the lessons before, where I could intellectually see something was wrong, but there wasn't the sense that I can never do it again until I'd had that emotional connection.
Yeah. All right. Well, perhaps if we can, Charles, just again have a few questions from the audience if they would like to ask you something. Okay. Thanks, Pierre.
So when you first passed in the spirit world, like 1 year after, you had some help from spirit, but you said it was very slow. And what could have been different to get help from divine love spirits in the beginning, or there was maybe some help you didn't see, or because it went much faster after? It was.
Yeah, I think that the help was given to me based on what I desired at the time. So I definitely was against the emotion, anything emotional, and also I didn't really have any feeling for God. So I've no doubt that my divine love friends would have been there should I have wanted them, and as soon as I did, they were. But before I wanted that, I was given the help that I desired, which was to figure this out with my mind, with my intellect, and so I had help to do that. And now I can see that was a part of my stepping stones, if you like, to getting to the point. Yeah. I was coming from such a cold and shut down place. I'm not sure that I could have. I couldn't long in that place.
He wouldn't have responded to divine love spirits helping him.
My desire was to solve the problem with my mind. Yeah.
Up the back there. Okay, keep your hand up, sir.
Do you and Annette know, or are you aware of the emotions or things you still have to go through to go on to the 8th sphere?
Yeah, I would say that we're in a process of understanding that, but we have some awareness that it's about, well, two things. One is about it's releasing, in a very broad sense, releasing the last of the fears in us. But those fears relate to complete reliance on God and complete living in the soul. So there's still some feeling of wanting to be self-reliant rather than God-reliant, although it's extremely diminished. And still, in that self-reliance, I suppose you could say that there's still a feeling that the mind is going to be safer, or the mind needs to be a checking mechanism as we follow God's way, or as we follow our emotional desires with God. And there's a fear, just a final fear of letting that go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mark down the front. Hear us. That's it.
I would like for you to talk about the perception of it being easier to progress in the spirit world versus being on earth.
Yeah.
Good question.
It's Annette and I talked about this as we got this sort of auspicious invitation today, that no, it's not easier in the spirit life, and in some ways, because there is no avenue for I suppose it's a double-edged sword, you could say, in the spirit world. There's no avenue for avoidance. And if you're humble, then that's a good thing. But if you're very much set in your ways, as I was, as Annette was, as most people are when they enter the spirit life, you continue on in this way that you've been, and there's no challenge to it. The beauty of the earth life is that there's people in different conditions of love all around you all of the time. And you have this opportunity to sort of make mistakes, fall down, get up, try again, try something else. And it's a sort of a very forgiving environment in that way. And you can speak with people who are above your condition or below your condition. But I, in my observations of the earth and in my experience, I would say progression, wherever you do it, requires persistence. It requires desire, strength of will. Even in my earliest progression, which wasn't the divine love way, it required those qualities from me. And whether you're on earth or in the spirit life, you need those qualities and to develop those qualities.
And if I can also say for Charles that when he did it the natural love way with his mind, it even required more persistence than he eventually had to have when doing it with God's help.
Very true.
Because it was slower. And so you can't, you're trying hard to make progress, and you just in 1 year you make this tiny little bit of progress.
And there's less reward. There's less reward doing it the natural way, because even though your surroundings improve, it's very gradual, and there's not the feeling relief that I wouldn't have called it that at the time because I was so detuned. But once I made that shift, even when I was in the repentance process, of which there was a lot, the relief each time that I engaged that process was very great. And yeah, and that's the same process. I see some people now engaging that on earth as I had to do in the spirit world, and it's the same process. So I would just encourage you all, because the other side of it is when you progress on earth, you start reducing your it's a French word, I can't say it, but you're reducing your tally of sin, if you like, as soon as you start to progress. But for myself, I had 75 years of sin And then I started after, I still had to deal with that 75 years. If you start now, you start reducing what you have to do, what you have to deal with.
So if I can ask a follow-up question. So in the spirit world, you immediately see your surroundings change as you process. But in the physical world, I don't know, is there maybe a lack of humility in feeling the reward as you do the work?
Yeah, I think when you really progress, you feel the difference in yourself, and your surroundings do actually change.
Yep. You attract different people in
Yes.
different surroundings. Yep.
Yes. So there is, even if there's disharmony or dissent in people around you, your environment does change because you love yourself or you love others more. There is an improvement. So if you're not seeing that, then you're not yet progressing.
Yeah, a very important statement he just made. If you're not seeing or feeling on God's way, if you're not seeing or feeling an improvement, then it means you're not on the way. Franz, this will be our last question.
So from your point of view, looking at our group, which is quite a variety, I guess, what would be the practical advice from your side to us?
Sure. I would say that you can, because I understand that Jesus has been speaking to you a lot about the mind. And that is clearly this judgment of emotion and the desire to intellectually rationalize or reason is a commonality, not with everyone here, but with a large majority. And something I would encourage everyone to do is to begin to be sensitive to the restraints that the mind is placing on you. So when I lived my life on earth, I was very restrained. I know Annette called it a cage. I would call it even worse, like a prison that I lived in, but I did not want to be aware of how restrained I was. And something you each have the opportunity to do with now the insights you have is you each need to begin this feeling journey and this trust of this feeling journey with God. And part of starting that can be to begin to feel the constraints that the mind is having on you. Feel the way that you draw back from opportunity, that you draw back from emotion, that you draw back from people, These are all operations of fear and the mind. And the more you can begin to feel the discomfort with your life, because there is discomfort. The problem in this region is that there's many avenues to avoid your discomfort. But if you instead tune into the discomfort that is sort of spiritual discomfort, it becomes a motivating factor. It becomes something that you can work with to improve your desire to experiment with something new. The other thing that I would say is that the mind wants certainty. The mind wants immediacy. And something that I had to learn in my spirit life, and is advice for each of you, is to come to recognize that God's way, especially when you're coming from this stoic background, you will make missteps. You will make mistakes. You will think that you're getting it or you're on the right track, and then you'll realize, oh, it didn't work, or I didn't see improvement, or maybe that wasn't my conscience, or all these kinds of things. The mind's tendency is to say, that's it, it's not true. That's it,
give up everything.
That's it, it's not working. And God's way and the emotional way is much kinder to yourself and much more explorative, much more curious, much more willing to have another go and to learn through that process, because I had to become to learn in my feeling state, not in my mind. And And the mind keeps wanting to undermine the feeling state and say you shouldn't trust it. But actually, the more I just engaged with experiments, I mentioned that I wasted time in regret a lot. And I had to sort of go through that and then realize, oh, this isn't repentance. This is me getting stuck in regret. But I didn't use, by that stage, I wouldn't let my mind tell me, well, you should give up and go back to analysing things. I said, okay, well, I have to try it differently. I have to, explore my emotions further than what I have been. And it's this gradual, it's sort of like you're voyaging into this unknown territory, which is your emotional state that you've stayed shut off from for so long. And the mind keeps wanting to keep you in this little island of restriction. And you need to begin to break down the mind's messages about that experimental process. Because a lot of you you try a little bit and then think it doesn't work and back away, rather than continuing voyaging outwards. Yeah.
Yeah, so courage, hey, it's going to be a requirement in your development.
Courage and kindness with yourself, that if you get it wrong, you just pick up and try it a different way. Try to be sensitive to why it went wrong, what was really happening emotionally, and persist.
Well, thank you both for coming and have a chat.
Thanks for having us.
Sorry you hang around for a while before you did.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Great to be with everybody. Yeah. Bye.